Hello, hello, and welcome everyone.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning, good afternoon. All right, everybody ready this morning, this afternoon, wherever this time zone finds you? We're excited to talk about probing today. Kate's going to do an introduction in a moment, but in the meantime, if you wouldn't mind putting your cameras on, it always creates a little bit more engagement when we can see each other, talk to one another. I'm going to have a couple chances to have you share things as we go. So if you want to keep your audio muted for now, but be ready, at the ready to unmute yourself so that we can chat.
Nice to see some familiar faces, and welcome to those who are attending for the first time.
Yes, very much.
So a very good morning, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to our webinar today with Kimberly Pung from Master Connection Associates, looking at probing and qualifying. Some of you have attended before, but for those who haven't, the usual housekeeping. You will notice we will put you all on mute because we do record the session. We encourage you all to use your chat boxes at the bottom of your screens for any questions for Kim throughout the webinar, and we'll take them throughout. We do, as I say, record today's session. It will be available on the IAC YouTube channel and the IAC webinar on demand page. And I will send it to you all as well after the session. It gives me great pleasure now to hand over to Kim for today's session. Thanks, Kim.
Great. Thank you, Kate, and good morning. Let me just mute everyone, and then I will stay unmuted. But then again, we're going to be doing some interaction today, so that makes it a little more interesting for all of us. So be prepared to unmute as we go through some questions. And as Kate said, utilizing the chat feature to ask any questions you have, and I'll be asking you to put some things in chat as we go through as well. But a great pleasure. Some new faces for us today, and a few of you I've certainly seen in the past. We're going to talk today about probing and qualifying and really identifying with our clients what matters most to help create success for us when it comes to selling. So the key sort of topics we want to cover in the next hour or so is just how to ask the right questions to uncover the business and qualify the business. I think what's important when we think about probing and qualifying is that it's not always just about finding out what's important to the client. We're also qualifying the business to make sure it's the right business for us. And so particularly when we're thinking about inquiry calls, we always want to keep in mind, like, where are our need patterns? What is the best business for us? That we're not just caving in to inquiries, but we're really being thoughtful about how we're asking questions too, to make sure that we're qualifying the business that's going to be right and best for us. I feel like we spend a lot of time spinning our wheels, reacting to customer demands. And in the reality of thinking, this really isn't that great business for us anyway. And so when we come to the end of June, we're going to be doing a webinar on prospecting, and that'll help us to figure out how to bring in the right business, because a lot of the leads I think we're getting these days are sometimes a lot of no leads and just not really the best business for us. But how do we ask the right questions, make sure we identify that, how to listen more effectively to what our clients are saying, and then how do we continue that conversation in a way to really uncover what's most important to them. And then really what's a challenge, I think, today, since things have become so electronic, is how do we set ourselves apart in the RFP process? So how do we make sure that we're still able to identify needs, uncover needs in a way that allows us to set ourselves apart in that RFP process? But how do we push through some of the electronic elements of our workplace today, and how leads are submitted and how planners are sourcing leads so that we can be more effective in that process as well? And then what do we do as we were getting to sell? So as we come to the conclusion of that probing process, that qualification, those inquiry calls that we do, what does that next step look like so that we can be responsive to the client as far as getting proposals out and getting information out, but also giving us some time to be successful in how we're creating those really personalized solutions? Because personalization is the name of the game today. I think what's on the top of minds of planners is not just responsiveness, because responsiveness is important. It's very important for us to be responding in a timely fashion to leads that are coming in, to leads that we're getting electronically through CBench or other sources. But we also need to make sure that we're not forgetting how important the personalization is. I think coming off of COVID, most of us, and many maybe still are, in a place where we still have a pretty high lead volume. And I think that lead volume sort of put us back in this reactionary mode where we kind of turned into order takers again. And how important it is for us to kind of take control of the process to make sure that we are really getting the information we need in order to be successful, in order to sell successfully, not just throwing proposals out just to get them out quickly, but doing so in a way that's thoughtful, that really is going to put us in the best place to get the business. So what we're hearing from planners is that they want more information, that they want more than just the specs. They want to understand how our properties, how our venues, how our conference centers can meet their needs specifically. We're spending all this time on discovery and asking the right questions, but then nothing's in the proposal that reflects the conversation that with the client about how to do that. So it's important for us to think about, if we are asking good questions on the front end, are we using that information to indeed customize our proposals, customize our recommendations in a way that is going to drive business to our conference centers and venues? And that we're not just relying on sort of that generic information about the destination, generic information about the hotel, and not really addressing the specific needs of our clients. But of course, to do that, we have to ask good questions. We have to be able to understand what their needs are. And so the probing process is probably one of the most essential parts of our success in selling. You know, lots of people get through the sales process and we get to closing the sale. Like, I just had trouble closing. I didn't, you know, we just didn't get the business. Well, our inability to close does not happen 3/4 of the way through the sales process. Our inability to close starts at hello. Our inability to close starts at whether or not we are taking the time to truly understand what our customers' needs are in a way that we can personalize our recommendations and can show them that we are the best fit. That will, of course, increase our conversion and our ability to close that business. And so planners are asking for it. We know that's the right thing to do. It's just making the time to do that in a world where we're constantly on that sort of hamster wheel and constantly dealing with so many leads and lead volume that's coming in for us right now. So I want to ask you first, before we get started, what are some of your challenges around probing, around qualifying, around getting customers to answer questions, being able to really get to customers so that you can get those answers to those questions? What are some of the challenges that you are experiencing when it comes to this part of the sales process, our ability to ask good questions and get good answers from our customers? So I'll open it up. You can put your thoughts in the chat. I'll just took the slides down so we can see each other better. But what are some challenges that we're having? Anyone to start us off before I just start calling on a couple people?
I don't know if this is correct, Kim, but maybe we have people that are sourcing meetings through a third party for the first time. They changed careers during the pandemic, so maybe not familiar kind of with what a conference center is or what we do. So it's a little bit challenging. Maybe they're new to their role and they're a little green. And so it's taking a lot longer to gather the information and bring the information out of them than maybe historically it did in the past.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is just a little bit, just taking longer for us to be able to do that and just ask. And is it also too that they just don't have all the answers, or once we ask questions, do they have a pretty good sense of what needs to get done?
They do, but you just got to whittle down that onion and get to it. Because I think they somewhat know, but they don't know. It might be a first-time client to them that they're sourcing and their first time using a conference center like ours too, and it's challenging.
All right, for sure. And sometimes those can be the best because they have no preconceived notions of what we can and can't do. They're coming into it with really fresh. And I think just as I get started, I can address that quickly, is how important it is for us to make that job easy for them. You know, if they're new to this process, we have a lot we can teach them about meeting planning, about sourcing, about what even questions they should be asking, about what they should be looking for. If they're certainly new and not really understanding the nuances of that, I think we can come alongside them and help them. Like if they've not even asked things that they should be, we could be sharing with them, you know, what are some insights, what they should be going back to their boss about, what they should be going back to their committee about. I think we can create some real advocates in those people by helping them to do their job better. And I think by doing so, even though if they're not ultimately the decision maker, they will carry a lot of influence with the people that they're talking to, because if we were nice to them and we were thoughtful and we helped them to be successful so they looked good in the eyes of their boss or their committee or whoever it is that they're working for, or as maybe a first-time planner, we're going to create success for them. That will come back to us. I do indeed feel that that'll come back to us. So I think that's just one strategy right from the beginning, is to not get too frustrated, but to say, let me help this person, because in helping them, it's going to help me. It's going to help me because they're going to have a good influence on the person making that decision. and I'm going to be able to benefit from that for sure. So thank you, Lynn. All right, anyone else? Any other challenges? You obviously signed up for this webinar. So what was it that you wanted to know? What did you want to learn? What are you having trouble with that we can help you with? Maybe that's a better way to ask the question. Quick. Anything else? All right, well, Lynn, you get my attention front and center. No, I'm teasing, everybody else will too. But as we go along, please ask your questions. I want to make this as, customized to where you need to be today, so that we can get some of those questions and challenges answered as we go along the way. It looks like somebody has Sarah. I find clients tend to prefer communication via email, which ends up creating a lot of back and forth to gather details. Yes, what we are seeing that a lot, Sarah. I think what's important in that situation is that we're asking for a phone call. In fact, I was just doing a training last week, ironically right here in Minneapolis, and one of the participants was in the midst of a back and forth situation with a client and feeling frustrated that he wasn't able to get to the end user, wasn't able to talk to the meeting planner directly, all this back and forth. And so we just suggested to him, just saying, hey, I know you're busy. I know you got a lot going on. I want to get this right. I want to make sure I understand what your needs are. Do you have time for a quick phone call? And within 2 minutes, that person replied and said, yes, I'm available all afternoon. So I think we have to sort of be aggressive or assertive a little bit more and saying, hey, I'd love to jump on a call. I don't, all this back and forth. I want to make sure I really understand your needs so that I'm recommending the right things to you. If we can put it back on, I want to make sure I hear you and understand what's important to you. It's surprising how many people will talk. In fact, I have a stat later that's going to show us how many particularly planners they want to talk to us. They want to have a successful event. They want a successful meeting. They want somebody who will partner with them. So even going back to the last slide I just showed, they want the personalization. They want somebody to actually care and pay attention. What they're tired of, and I think why sometimes things get pushed to email, is that they're tired of the sales pitch. They're tired of just talking to us and us saying the same thing over and over again and not really listening to them. And so if they feel like they're not going to really listen to me anyway, why should I talk to them? It just makes it easier for them to go email. I think from a other electronic standpoint with Cvent, other things, obviously that's a sourcing option for them that's easy. It's easy for them to compare offers and things, but I think we need to be also assertive in saying, I'd love to talk to you more so I can really understand what's important and I can put you in the best place. So I think just asking for that every once in a while, Sarah, will give us that better opportunity. Lindsay says, planners requesting a proposal in a short turnaround time from sending the RFP. And so, Lindsay, maybe just share with me, what does that turnaround time look like? Like, how quickly are they asking for these things? Is she responding on the answer? The next day. All right. So I'm going to tackle that when we get to the end today. I have a really great sort of secret sauce to share with you called the verification process that I think is going to help bridge the gap between those demands of needing that response right away. Barbara says 2 hours, which of course is the case. And is this 2 hours that they're asking, Barbara, from an RFP type situation, or you're on the phone with them and they're talking and say, I need this proposal in 2 hours? So just give me some clarification around that, because I think there's some things we can do to also bridge that gap so that gives us a little bit more time to put something more meaningful together and also hits their concerns. All right, so AJ, I think it's Adam, maybe you said, related to Lynn, I think it's confidence in staff, training, managing client expectations with the venue without standing rude, having the confidence to say, no, this won't work, but have you tried this? So I just need some clarification on that. If you can come off mute and share exactly what you mean by that. I think it's Adam. I know that from the list. So Adam, do you mind coming off mute and
Yeah, of course. What I mean by that is being in the industry for quite some time, I can safely say I have the confidence in managing client expectations by saying, no, the venue can't do this. So let's work together to deliver an exceptional event to avoid disappointment. But people coming into the industry, like I said, they come from all sorts of venues. It can come across as people pleasers. And operationally, sometimes that just doesn't work.
right?
So it's the approach on training this, where the generation coming up are saying, I don't want to come across rude or obnoxious.
Okay.
So it's managing the expectations from a training point of view.
All right. So you're talking about your own staff and your own
Correct.
staff's ability to say, hey, we can't do that. We can, and so okay, I'm hearing you. And I think that goes along the same lines of us really trying to force fit business that maybe isn't right business for us in the first place. And so with the increased lead volume, I think a lot of less experienced salespeople are feeling like, I got to make this work. Like the client is asking for these demands. I got to figure out how to do this. And if we really reflected, we'd say, that isn't even a good piece of business for us. It's not at a good time. It's not feeding a good need period for us. It's too big. It's too small. It's taking up too many rooms. It's taking up too much space. Like we would say, why are we trying to force fit? But I think there is this feeling with some perhaps less experienced salespeople, like those inquiries come, I got to figure out how to make them work. And giving them some of the freedom to say, you can say no, or you can hold up our own expectations of this is what we need you to do. And if you can't do this, then we're walking away, and making that okay. And so part of that, Adam, I think is training, but also just awareness to say, let's look at the leads coming in. Let's look at what the clients are asking. Is this good business for us to take this and to sort of give in to their demand? Or is it better for us to say, you know what, this maybe isn't the best fit for us, and just saying no, as you said, walking away, or offering alternatives to say, this isn't going to work, but we suggest that this will be. And another way of course, responding to that, Adam, is just in how they handle objections. Because if you have the client saying, I really want this, and you're saying, no, you can't do this, that comes back to handling objections too, which is another whole webinar. But to really be able to empathize with that client and say, I understand it's really important to you to do it like this. Let me ask you a couple of questions so that you can find out a little bit more about what their concern or demand or need is, or how they want it done a certain way. And then come back after having asked some questions to say, well, I hear you, I understand what you're wanting to do. Let me just suggest this, because I think it might be better fit based on the things that you want to do. And having empathized with them first, and asked a couple questions so that they kind of get engaged and involved in the resolution, they're often more open to a different solution that maybe was originally presented to them. So, and then Barbara's saying at the inquiry stage, 2 to 4 hours to reply. And after that, hold on, let me just switch up. After that, inquiry might not be available for us to reply. So you're saying that it's already been booked? I guess what you're saying, 2 hours. Oh, we'll talk about that. I think I have a great suggestion to help us work through some of those timing issues that we are experiencing. Okay, so let's dig into this. What's important, of course, for all of us as we think through this is when we're in that initial inquiry process and we're thinking about the probing and qualifying, this can happen anytime. I think we're obviously focused very much so on inquiries that we get. We're focused very much so on initial sales calls that we may be going out to, that we've found business. But we really have to think about how good we are at asking questions at all stages of the sales process. So if we're at a networking event, we want to be prepared for how we can ask the right questions. If we're doing a site visit, we still want to think about how we're going to ask questions even before we start taking them on that site tour to make sure that we understand their needs. At trade shows or any exchange or any opportunity we have to meet with a client, we want to be thinking about how we can be positioning ourselves in a very curious way to be asking questions in order to better understand their needs, better show interest in their leads or their business with us and how we're doing. So all of that is important, that we take time to build rapport, that we show genuine interest in them, and we make it conversational. And we're really the ones that are in charge of doing that. We're the ones who have to ask the right questions, to create the conversation, to get them to open up about their needs, to get them open up about what's important to them. And that really is having, I feel, a genuine curiosity. And a genuine curiosity, I think, is different than being nosy or whatever else. But genuine curiosity is a strong desire to learn something else about somebody else, regardless of the outcome. So regardless whether we're going to book the business or not, that genuine curiosity is going to go a long way in us being successful in opening them up, making them comfortable at answering our questions, uncovering those implied needs, those desires, those preferences. So more than just dates, rates, and space, that we're doing all of that before we ever start to sell. That whether it's on an inquiry call, whether it's on an initial sales call, whether we're having an opportunity to talk to somebody at a networking event and we start to have a conversation, we feel like, gosh, I have an opportunity here to share something about how I can meet those unique needs for them, that we're always asking questions first before we sell, and that we're not jumping in too quickly to start that sale, because it's always going to be easier for us to sell somebody something that they want rather than what we think that they want. So particularly when you are thinking about some of the more inexperienced planners or inexperienced people that are put in a planning position right now, they don't really have any idea what they want. So we don't want to make any assumptions about what they're asking us, because their naivete or they're just not being very skilled or understanding all the details and all the nuances could put us into a pigeonhole of not even offering all the things that we could, because we didn't really take charge of the conversation and sort of let them handle it. So even though the clients sometimes want to put us in that order taking role, agreed, yes, clients sometimes put us there. They just give me the rates, just give me the availability. They want to keep us there. So we have to sort of push through that and have, an assertive, not aggressive, but an assertive nature and more consultative type selling to come alongside and ask the questions, because that's going to allow us to create far more customized solutions than if we just kind of stick in that order taking role. Because that order taking role is going to keep us at the tip of the iceberg. So if you've been through any of our training before, we use this analogy of an iceberg to help really understand how complex our customers' needs are and how dangerous it is to stay up there at just dates, rates, and space. To just stay at, just give me the availability, just give me the rates. Or again, if we have a less experienced planner or even a less experienced salesperson who doesn't have the confidence to keep pushing and asking better questions, if we stay up here, we're missing 90% of what's important to the client. So we know about an iceberg. What's unique about an iceberg, of course, is only 10% showing above the water, 90% is below. If we just stay at the tip on just the function of the meeting, dates, rates, space, they need a place to have a meeting, they need some food to eat, they need some guest rooms to stay in. If we stay up there, it's going to be very hard for us to differentiate our property, because let's be honest, every hotel, every conference center, every venue in our comp set has a meeting space, has food, has guest rooms, right? Every single one of them. So everybody needs the explicit needs. But if we want to be better, if we want to show what the IAC difference is, if we want to be able to differentiate our venues, if we want to differentiate our conference centers, our hotels, we've got to dig into those needs, wants, and preferences. We've got to understand, when they say we're looking for something really efficient or flexible or unique or sustainable, well, what does that mean to them? Like, we can say, oh, yes, we're very sustainable. We have all these measures in place and blah, 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 and we're green this, we're certified that. That may not even be what they need or want. So we've got to get confident in asking the right questions and guiding the conversation in a way that's going to get us to these implied needs, because this is what they're making their decision on. They may say rates, but they also want a good flow of the meeting. They want accessibility. They want the meeting space to not be too far away from this. They want a good ROI. They want to impress their clients, whatever it is, they have needs and they're willing to pay for that often to have that certain experience of looking for. We're never going to be able to build value in our rate and what we're charging if we don't know what's motivating them to buy. If we don't know what are going to be the difference makers that are going to get them to say, I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that even though it's more expensive than we hope to spend. It's more expensive than our budget, because that's the experience that we want for this event. That's the experience that we want for this meeting. And if we're not good at asking those questions, we're not going to get to that. And then it's always going to be about rate. And then how do we differentiate ourselves if we don't know what those preferences and needs were to help us build value in the rate that we are asking to do that? So I'm going to introduce you to the probing process. And this is the process that we teach in our sales training as to how to help navigate that consultative selling part of our job. How do we navigate asking the right questions so that we can be confident and assertive in guiding that consultative selling so that we're getting good answers to the questions that we need to ask to put us in a place of being successful when we're selling. And so if you see the probing process here, it's shaped like a funnel very intentionally. So at the top of the gap is very big, and the bottom of the funnel, of course, the gap is very narrow. And so if you think about when you're first meeting with a client, whether it is an inquiry call, initial sales call, you're meeting at a networking event, whatever it is, my first conversation, when I first start talking to them, my understanding of what is important to them is big, and my lack of understanding, I should say. So the gap is big. I don't know anything about them, right? I don't know anything about what they want. I don't know anything what they need. So the gap is big. And so they don't know very much about me either. And so their gap in understanding me is big. But before I start filling in their gap with here's what we can do for you, I have to understand what their gap is. I have to understand what their needs are. I have to understand what their preferences are. So at the beginning of the conversation, the gap is big. But hopefully by the time we ask the right questions, we can narrow that down into the gap's tiny, like a real funnel. So I start to sell, I know what's important to them. I know what those things are. And the probing process helps us to do that. It's just a process, a structure, a format to help guide us in the conversation so that we're asking the right questions, we're sticking in it, logging up, we're digging deeper underneath the surface of the water to get to those implied needs so that we can be successful in what it is that we're trying to do. So I'll just go through the four. There's 4 steps to the probing process: the positive opening, broad probes, focus probes, finalizing probes. I'll start at the beginning, which is positive opening. And that is genuinely creating good rapport, right? That we are generally creating energy, that we answer the phone with an inquiry call with enthusiasm. We show excitement for the leads that they're bringing into us. If we're on a sales call, we've already had some communication with them, whether it's through email or a brief conversation the first time, or they've come in for a site. We would acknowledge any prior communication we've had. Maybe they just told us they've just been on vacation. So we acknowledge that. We acknowledge anything we know about their business. All of this sort of small talk and building rapport is important. It's important to get them warmed up. It's important for them to feel comfortable talking to us. They feel validated when we ask them a little bit about their company. So who are you and what company are you with? And oh, where's your company based? And what do you do for the organization? All those types of questions in an inquiry are going to really set the stage that you genuinely care and genuinely want to know. And plus, some of that information is very helpful in how we're going to ask our questions about what type of event and program that they are going to be playing. So we want to start with that small talk. We want to develop that rapport. We don't want to just jump right in and go, all right, well, what are you planning for the meeting? Because they may not be terribly open to sharing that if they don't feel like, who are you and why am I talking to you and what's important about this? So building that rapport. And so a big part of that is coming with energy, having positive tone, having a positive attitude. Appearance, obviously, for an inquiry call is going to be less obvious, but just how we're coming across to the client is very important. That energy and enthusiasm that we're bringing to the experience is important. It makes the person feel important, makes them feel validated, and they're much more willing to share with us. So we start with that positive opening, build rapport, have the small talk. Again, inquiry call, we want to have a little small talk. Tell me about your company. Where are you calling from today? Oh, great. I just heard that you had some great weather there. You know how to small talk. Do it, because it's really important. Even a networking event, a little small talk first before we start digging into, oh, well, I actually was thinking about your company the other day, and we are thinking that you may have some meetings in our area. I don't want to start with that. I'm going to start with, hey, tell me about you. Tell me about your organization. Maybe I've already done my research. I a little know that already, but ask them anyway, because that's what's going to build that relationship with them. And then when you start asking the questions, it seems natural that we're going to start probing and digging in a little bit more to the things that are going to be important to them. So that second step then of the probing process is asking what we call the broad probes. And these are the big picture, open-ended questions that are going to tell us about their program, themselves, their event, their attendees, where they've been in the past, what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past. All those questions that I think actually most of us are pretty good at asking. Most of us are pretty savvy. We know to say things like, well, what's most important to you? And tell me what you've planned in the past, or tell me what you've planned for this program, or what's gone really well in the past, what hasn't. I think we know that we need to ask these questions at the beginning, because it helps us to get a sense of what's important to them, what they're doing, what they have planned. And we always want to ask these in an open-ended fashion. So I wouldn't say something like, do you need meeting space? Well, of course, they're calling you. Tell me what you have planned for the meeting. What brought our venue to mind? What's most important to you when planning this particular event? And so we can ask a lot of questions, but if you really went back and recorded yourself and listened, a lot of our questions are close-ended, right? Do you need space? Are you planning to do food and beverage? All those, yes or no. Now, does sometimes the client elaborate? Yes, but oftentimes they don't. And then we just have to ask another question anyway. So why not just start with, tell me what you have planned for this meeting versus what kind of setup are you looking for? Or do you want to have breakfast and do you want to include a break with that? But rather, what are you planning for food and beverage? Or have you considered what you want to do from a food and beverage standpoint? So asking those big open-ended questions are critical to get the customer talking. At this stage of the sales process, whether it's an inquiry call, initial sales call, or even if I'm meeting someone in an event, networking, or otherwise trade show, they should be talking more than you. So if you're talking right away at the beginning, it means we're jumping too quickly to sound. We're too quickly trying to tell them what we have before we really listened to what's important to them first. So a key success factor, if we're doing a good job with probing and qualifying, is they are talking more and we're just guiding the conversation. Tell me more about that. Tell me what you've experienced in the past. All those questions are going to help us to do that. So let's hear from you. What are some of the good questions that you're using right now that are good open, oh, sorry, a little too quick, little good open-ended questions that help you to start uncovering needs, to help getting a little bit more understanding of what are they're planning. What are some good questions that you're using? Put them in the chat or just come off mute and share one with us. Sarah says, what is the main goal of your conference? Right. So Sarah, what are you hoping to find out from that? You can come off mute and share with us a little bit.
Sorry, I have a little bit of a cold here. Yeah, just really asking, what is your main goal of the conference? What are their expectations? Just kind of digging a little bit deeper to ensure that, we're the right venue for them. We're able to deliver, and, everybody's main goal might be very different. For us, like, we are an educational institute. So if their main goal is luxury, we might not be able to deliver that the same, of what they're expecting.
Yeah. Or at least we want to know how to position what we have to meet those expectations. Like you said, we may not be the best fit, but maybe there's a way that we can position what we do have to be the right fit for them. But if we don't know their expectations around luxury or what those expectations might be, we'll just sell the same way and it won't hit the way we want it to hit. So critical. All right. So thank you so much, Sarah. So Sue has said, tell me a little bit about your attendees for your conference. So Sue, come off mute and tell us, what do you hope to understand just by asking about the attendees? How does that help you?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, are they male or female predominantly, or younger, or maybe a little bit more mature in their career? Are they managers or more entry level? So really understanding not only what they're hoping to get from the conference itself, but also what in the area I can recommend to them. And just from, being in the industry a while, just kind of assuming some things based on who's coming to the conference and what their objectives are.
And right there, Victor, and what the attendees' experiences, the expectations are would be important to find out, like, what do they want out of this event? What do they want out of this meeting or conference? Helps us to understand that. Having some of those demographics, like you said, particularly if they're asking, for, activities or different things they want to be planning outside of the conference, it does help us understand better who's coming, what they like to enjoy doing in the past. All those things are going to be helpful for us to understand what that is. All right, anybody else with some great questions? Thank you, Sue. Anybody else with some great questions? All right, well, we'll move on. So what's important, of course, is asking the big, broad, open questions: who, what, where, why, whatever it is, always open-ended, always, because if I go back to Sue's question, we can sometimes do what I call leading questions. So if Sue were to say, and I'm sure Sue's not doing this, but this is an example, tell me a little bit about the attendees of your conference. Are they mostly male? Are they female? Are they younger? Are they older? We sort of do these leading questions, like a multiple choice, which then sort of directs the conversation in a certain way. What's better to just say is, just as Sue's asked it, tell me a little bit about the attendees who are coming to your conference. That person will interpret that question however they need to and want to. And whatever they tell you is going to be valuable. So it may not have been exactly what you intended to find out. Maybe you don't even find out about male or female. Maybe you don't find out about demographics, but you find out something else that's important to those attendees that's going to create success for you in building out this meeting and conference. That's going to be very valuable for you. And so that's why the more open-ended our questions are, the more information we'll get from them in a very organic and natural way that isn't going to be too directed by some of our assumptions, some of our experience, because sometimes we make a lot of assumptions about what people need based on what's happened in the past with other attendees. And like Sarah said, everyone's main goal is going to be different. And so if I don't find out specifically what that is, it's going to be important for me to do so. But even when we ask a good question, so like, for example, let me just ask, let me find another person here that we haven't heard from. Is Jody on? I think Jody's on. Hey, Jody, come off mute for a moment. Jody,
Okay.
are you there?
Yep.
Hello. Oh, there you are. She's been on camera all the time. Thank you so much. All right, so Jody, just put yourself in the hat of a customer right now. And if I asked you what was the main goal of your conference, what might be something that you would share?
Maybe some team bonding.
Team bonding. Okay. All right. So let me ask somebody else. So Jody says team bonding. Let me ask, who else do we have here? Let me just make sure I see all of our list of people. Let me go to Cassidy. Cassidy, if I asked you, if you think about, you're the conference person now, you're the customer hat on, what is the main goal of your conference? What might you say, Cassidy?
Like educational purposes, how to inspire our customers, stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And let's go to one more. Let's go to Barbara. Barbara, what would you say if I asked you what is the main goal of your conference? Barbara there? All right, Barbara's not there. How about Emily? Emily, why don't you tell us? If I was asking you as the customer, what is the main goal of your conference? What might you say to that? Emily? Not there. All right, that's okay. So we have a couple. We have Jody saying team bonding, and we have Cassidy saying educational purposes, and they want to inspire. And so in doing so, Jody, let's go back to you. How would you start selling then to the team bonding?
Well, I'd ask them what they've done in the past. And then, I mean, we do a lot of team building activities here on property. So then I would make some suggestions based on what they like to do, what they've done in the past, what their interests are.
Okay, so excellent, Jody. She walked right into that and did an excellent job. So see how she said, like, ask them first what they did in the past. That is what we call a focus probe. So when you ask a good question like, what's the main goal of your conference? And they say team bonding, we don't just leave it at that because there's a lot behind team bonding. I ask that next best question, which we call a focus probe, to say, well, tell me what you've done in the past. Or what's important to you about the team bonding? Or what's worked before? Or when you say team bonding, what were your expectations? Or share with me more about that. All those focus probes are going to be the questions that really get us below the surface, because even team bonding still stays pretty close to that water level of not really knowing for sure what it is that they are looking for and what's going to be important and what does even team bonding mean to them, right? So we have a tendency to answer those questions with a response of, well, let me tell you what I have. Again, in the framework of what we think team bonding is, in the framework of what we know we can do for team building and other things, but we have to first find out what it is that they're looking for. So asking, what are you looking for team building? Can you be more specific? Can you please elaborate on what the expectations are there? And then let them talk a little bit more about that. So going back to Cassidy's, when she says, I'm looking for educational purposes, I would say, well, can you be more specific about what your goal is around education for this particular conference? Let her answer. I'd also dig into the inspire. You said you wanted to inspire your team. So what does that look like? Or can you be more specific about what it is you'd like to do for the team? Making sure that we're asking those questions. And that comes back to having that confidence, I think, of being able to control the conversation and not taking things on the surface level, but being able to get below the surface and dig in a little bit more. That takes a little bit more time. But if people do it well, if you do it well as a salesperson, you can actually get a lot of information by just asking a couple of questions and being willing to dig in to make sure they understand exactly what it is that they're looking for. So those focus probes help us to really get below the surface and find those preferences, those wants, keeps us from selling too quickly, and also selling on what we think they want versus what they really do want. And so a big key to this, of course, is that you're really not just asking good questions, but listening. I think listening is one of the most important parts of probing and qualifying, really listening to what our clients are telling us and not listening from the framework always of what we can do, but just listening to what they're saying, writing down what they're saying, taking notes on their responses. I want to use their words as much as I can when I start to sell. So if I can go back to specifically things they said or Cassie would have said about inspiration, about educational purposes, if I can go back to some of the key words that they have shared, then I will be able to connect much better with what it is that they are expecting. So paying attention to responses, writing down what they say, using that to guide your next questions like a normal conversation. Like normally, if you're meeting somebody on the street or you had a friend that was talking to you, you would dig in, you'd ask, you'd be curious, you'd follow up more because you wanted to learn more, you wanted to understand more, you wanted to show interest in them. So those things are so, so important. But what also is very important is that it's not always just about advancing the sale. Part of this is just creating a really positive relationship with our customers. Selling cannot be our only motive. If selling is our only motive, then we're going to come across very salesy. We're not going to come across genuinely interested. We're going to come across as we're trying to fit something and sell you something in a way that maybe isn't the right fit for you. So when we're really digging in and listening and asking the right questions, it is about creating that really positive and mutually beneficial relationship with that customer that hopefully will long-term work. And I feel like the better we do that, the more we are going to convert, the more sales we are going to make, because we took the time to dig in to show that genuine interest in what they were doing. And that's what's getting us, of course, to those implied needs, those emotions, those wants, those preferences, those things that are going to make that situation very unique to them so that their goal, I can help them accomplish their goals and what they're trying to achieve and be successful in doing that. So as we're making our way through the probing process, we're making our way through that funnel as we're asking these questions, these big, broad, open-ended questions, and then the follow-up questions with the focus probes, we're narrowing that gap, which means we're coming to a better understanding of what's important to them. And then we want to at some point go, all right, I'm going to start selling. And the finalizing probes are just that. They're just really almost a rhetorical question that moves us from the probing part of the call to selling. And there should be a very distinct transition of taking the time to uncover all the needs first, and then transitioning to, let me tell you a little bit about our property. Do you have some time for me to tell you how our conference center I think is going to be a great fit for you? And what's important about that is not necessarily that you say that. That's important. But what's more important is that there has been a distinctive difference between the probing part of the call and selling. That we don't do what I call probing, selling, probing, selling, probing, selling. I ask a question, what's your main goal? Oh, you want to do team building? Tell me a little bit more about that. Or let me tell you what we can do for team building. And then I come back and ask our question. So you also said you wanted to inspire your people. So can you tell me what you mean by that? Great, great, great. Oh, and so we have these very inspiring, rooms, and we have daylight, natural daylight, and great space for you. It's gonna be very inspiring. And then I go back and ask another question. And so doing so is very disjointed for the customer to really get a grasp on what it is that you can do. So it is important and intentional that we ask all the questions up front, then transition to selling with some statement like this. Is there anything else I should know before I tell you about what we can offer? Or now that I understand what's most important to you, can I take a few minutes to tell you how our venue I think is going to be a great fit for you? And then transitioning to that selling part of the call. And so that's what's going to create success for us as we qualify. But we don't want to start selling. We don't want to close off this funnel until we know that gap, until we know the things that are important to them, that we understand the criteria for making a decision, that we know what success is going to look like from a team bonding, from an inspirational standpoint, from an educational purposes, whatever it is that we've dug in to do that to be successful with this. And this is where I think we can go back to your thought, Anna, is giving those salespeople the confidence to keep digging and asking those questions so they can really understand exactly what the expectations are of the client. And then as we're making recommendations, we can put it in the context of, this is what you wanted. I think this will be the best alternative to get you to that result. Because sometimes clients will say they want this thing, but we know there's a better option. We know there's a better alternative. We know there's a better way to set it up. We know there's a better way to have the flow. We know there's a better way for registration, whatever it is. But if we jump too quickly to say, no, I think there's a better way, they're going to be resistant to that. But if we've taken the time to really say, well, tell me exactly what you'd like the flow to be. Tell me exactly like what your expectation is around the registration, or tell me exactly what you're trying to accomplish with this particular event during the meeting. When we hear their vision, then we can better position an alternative that they're going to be more open to, and I think more agreeable to, because we understand a little bit better what success is going to look like. And so therefore we can say, actually, I have a better way. I think that if we did it this way, this is going to give you that better flow. This is going to give you that better networking opportunity. This is going to give you more team camaraderie or conversation, whatever it is. If we can position it back to how it's going to benefit them, because we've heard more about what the success is going to look like, I think we're going to find better success in that awkward place of, no, this might be a better fit for you in doing so. So let me know, Adam, if you think that that'll be successful with you and your team having just better understood what's important to them. But some key things that we also want to make sure people are asking, that you're asking, is who else are you looking at? We got to know who else they're considering, whether it's another hotel, whether it's another conference center. In order for us to differentiate what we might be able to do better, we have to know who else they're considering. So making sure that you're always asking, who else are you looking at? Have you talked to them already? If you have, making sure you're understanding what they're being offered there, so that you can always be selling against that and understand the differences in that. We also want to make sure we understand the decision-making process. So in addition to you, so even if we know we have a very inexperienced planner on the line, we don't want to ever discount that maybe they actually are the decision maker. In addition to you, who else is going to be involved in the decision-making process? We want to know who that is. We want to know what their expectations are. So it's good to ask them what's important to them. What is their deciding factor, so that we're making sure that we're involving all the stakeholders to be successful in our proposal and in our recommendation. So in addition to who's making the decision, we want to know when the decision is going to be made, and then what they're going to base that final decision on. For so many, you're going to hear price, because that's easy. And of course, price is important. I'm not discounting that that companies are under tight budgets, that, the gravy train is slowing down a little bit post-COVID, or even has gotten worse for some companies post-COVID. So price is going to be an issue, but there's always something else. And we got to know what that is. Again, we're never going to be able to create value in our price if we don't know what they value. I'm pretty sure all of us have bought something we could not afford. Maybe I'm the only one. And if I am, then I own it. We bought something we couldn't afford. And why did we? Why did we? Anyone? Anyone out there? Why did we buy it? Even though it was a little out of our price range, even though maybe it was a little more than we wanted to spend. Why did we buy it? Pair of shoes, couch, new car. Why would we buy it anyway?
Because we want it.
Because we want it. Right. And that's what we do as salespeople. We create the want. So if I don't know what they value besides price, I'll never be able to build the value in price. So in addition to price, what else are you going to base the decision on? Or in addition to price, what else is important to you? When I find out what those things are, it's going to better position you to sell and not have to cave in on the rate that I am going to cave in on. So all of this knowledge that we gain through the right way to ask questions is going to give us confidence. It's going to give us confidence in selling. It's going to give us confidence in how we position our solutions and recommendations to us. It's going to give us confidence in our product and how we're positioning our product to them. So knowing what the gap is, knowing what the issues are, knowing what's going to cause them to decide on a venue, knowing all those special needs, what they're going to base their decision on, all those things, knowing what success looks like for them, all those things are going to help us to get better at selling, right? And so the more we know about the customer, we know about their attitude about us, about who else they're looking at, the better our position is going to be, and that more knowledge is going to help us to successfully close. And so when we get to that close, we can have more confidence around knowing that we positioned something that hopefully is, I got to have it. Just like Jody said, I got to have it. I want it. And we've created that value for them because we understood the things that were important to them. So really quickly, I think it's important for us to address the RFP process and the third parties and how we overcome some of those challenges that we do have, and a couple of the challenges that you identified specifically when it came to third parties. As I mentioned earlier, we want to respect their decision to do the electronic process. It is easy for meeting planners to do that, but it doesn't mean we have to look like everybody else, and it doesn't mean we have to act like everybody else. I have statistics, and I'll pop it to you really quick right here. That in our data from focus groups that we do, 80% of planners will say, yes, it's absolutely okay to come. Absolutely okay to come. And I told you earlier, these are the ones they want to have a good process. You know, in fact, I have a quote from one right here that we had a focus group not too long ago that said, if I only receive a response to an RFP and maybe a follow-up email when a decision is going to be made, don't waste your time. If the salesperson does not further engage, it does not show an interest in being a partner. And so I think we have to reflect on kind of getting over our own feeling of they don't want us to call, they did the email, they did the RFP, they don't have time for me. That is a lot of times our own perception of the situation that we're thinking that we're putting on ourselves, we're putting on the client. I think most planners, as this one said, and where the statistics say that I just showed you, most planners want you to call or at least attempt to call because they want someone that's going to partner with them. They want success. They want to make sure that the program goes well, and they want somebody who's genuinely interested in making that happen. And so that means we have to be a little more assertive. I'm sorry, I went a little quick. We have to be a little more assertive in asking for that phone appointment. So back to the conversation I had earlier with, let's see, who was it? It was Sarah, I think, right? Sarah? You know, preferring email, it's just asking. It's just saying, do you have 10 minutes? And be really direct, very transparent. Do you have 10 minutes? I'd just like to ask you a couple questions. I better understand the program. I know you're busy, I'm busy, so this might save us all a little bit of time. You're going to be surprised at how often people say, go ahead, call me now. But we have to ask. We don't ask, we don't get. So that's my first step is, you know, let's try this first. And then if it's just resorting to email, then at least try to ask a couple questions via email. So let me just take a couple minutes and ask you a couple questions and ask the big probing questions. What's important to you, or clarify something that they said in the RFP. At least attempt to do that, but then always say at the bottom, if it's easier for us to talk on the phone, just, I have a couple minutes, just let me know, I'll jump on the phone with you quickly. So keep offering that as a way of providing service and getting close to them and understanding them. Then with the RFP, of course, want to respond quickly and complete everything. So even if we don't have a golf course, we say how close the closest golf course is. You want to, when you look at that RFP, especially how it comes through like on Steven and others, it's like lined up, my property, your property, someone else's property here. You don't want any blank spaces. So as much as you can complete that, that shows what you can offer them, it's going to be the best way to put your foot forward for your property. And then always follow up with that phone call, always follow up to ask them, you know, how do they, you know, do they have any questions? Follow up after you've received them. So any particular techniques that any of you have to kind of get through Sarah's concern here? We've talked about a couple things, but any other techniques anyone has to try to reach third parties, to get to that end user, to get people on the phone, any other strategies or practices that have been successful for any of you in that process? I'll just take down my screen quick so we can see if anybody wants to share any of their own thoughts around this. Anybody else had any best practice?
I think mine is just as if you get it within the hour, just responding immediately, just saying I've received it, even if you don't have time to get to the qualifying process or ask for the phone call yet, just to be like, hello, we got your RFP, we'll be in touch, and just recognizing that we've received it immediately. Yeah,
that's really important. I think when we're looking at response time, and kind of to go to the concern that Barbara brought to us as well, I think we often feel like that 2-hour response time has to be a proposal. That's not the case. We just need to recognize that we got the lead and keep communication going with the customer. That's all. Lots of times, and again, this is just us asking, you know, when do you need this by? Lots of people are going to say, oh gosh, I'm busy today and tomorrow. I'm not even going to get to this till Monday. If you have it to me by Monday morning, that's great. But we don't take control of that enough. We just sort of leave ourselves open to, I got to get this out right away. Getting it out right away doesn't mean necessarily a proposal. And that's what I want to share with you, our little secret sauce that I'm going to talk about, which is what we call the verification process. So to Lynn's point, it's just getting any communication back to them that says that they have the lead. So for example, if you get an electronic lead, you want to make sure immediately somebody responds. And a lot of us have the electronic responses on, like through Steven, that'll say, this has been acknowledged. But what's even better from a lead standpoint is if you have a lead catcher in your department, that lead catcher immediately responds and says, great, we've got your lead, so thankful that we received this, thank you so much. The person in charge of your account, Cassidy, who I've copied on this email, will get back to you. When is the best time for them to get in touch with you to discuss this? And so we're almost skipping a whole bunch of steps, like you know, who could I call? Who's your account manager? And don't say the person who handles this market segment, doesn't matter. Cassidy handles it. Like, let's take all of the hard stuff about doing business with us and just get right to it and say, Cassidy is the person who's going to handle your account. When is a good time for her to follow up with you? Now, Cassidy's been copied. So Cassidy, now it's in her vault. Like, the lead catcher's out of it. The lead catcher doesn't have to come, oh, this is when she's available. Okay, Cassidy, this is when she's available. Now it's right to Cassidy. Cassidy knows she has the lead. And now Cassidy has direct connection with that person in order to respond to them directly and start setting up that phone call. That is going to get you so much great response right away in doing so. So that would be any leads that come in electronically that you'd want to immediately have somebody, whoever catches that lead, say quickly, so thankful for your lead, such and such Cassidy is going to be in charge of this account. I've got copied her here. She will follow up with you. When's a good time to do that? And then the correspondence with her and Kathy starts. So that's the first sort of step. The second is after maybe we've had the inquiry call, doing what we call the verification process. So again, I've had the inquiry call, and I think that's what you spoke to specifically, Sue. Let me just go back to your question again directly. I think you said it was after the inquiry that you are coming across people wanting somebody quickly, right? Did I say that? At the inquiry stage, 2 to 4 hours after the reply, after that inquiry might not be available for us to reply. So what we want to do, so first initiate the first thing I talked about, like have somebody catch that lead right away and quickly respond back, connecting them directly to the sales manager who's going to be responding to that lead, who handles that market with that account. But if an inquiry has taken place, so say you or the lead catcher had a phone conversation where the inquiry came in by phone, and now we've uncovered some of those leads a little bit. Now the next step is the proposal. Another important step in the middle to give us a little time is we call the verification process. The quicker we get back, the better response we're going to get. So as Lynn said, we got to get back right away, but that doesn't mean a proposal. So the verification process allows you to quickly verify back with them what you've just spoken about as a sort of a stopgap in between that and the proposal. So you just very quickly send an email back to them right away that says within 2 hours or less, if you can. First, just do it right away if you can. Just quickly review. It was so great to talk to you. Thank you much for sharing a little bit about your upcoming meeting and name the meeting. I know you're looking for these dates, and then just bullet down. What did they talk about? So bullet down all the explicities. You're looking for these dates, this many guest rooms, this much meeting space over these many days, food and beverage to this. You also said you wanted to make sure the meeting was inspirational, and by inspirational, you meant this. And then, so clarify anything. So just bullet it down, like very quick. Don't spend a lot of time. Just thanks for your time today. So excited to hear about your meeting. Bullet it down, explicit needs and implied. And then say, if I've gotten anything wrong, please send an email back right away with any corrections. So if it's 45 rooms, there's like 40, then I hear from that right away. And then articulate the next steps. I will have a proposal to you by this date or time as we agreed. And then I'd like to set up a phone appointment or whatever to follow up if you haven't done that already, so that you're always making sure that you have a follow up with that. I think what's so important for us today is that we just keep the communication going. We don't have to hand the proposal out in 2 hours, but we do have to communicate with them. And that communication with them is going to set us apart from everybody else that they sent those leads from. So if they hear back from us right away, we're reconfirming what we've heard from them. It validates that we've heard them. It gives them confidence that we know the specs and what was important to them. And we articulate what those next steps are, which is going to be crucial in you staying in the game, so to speak, and keeping your pulse on being able to close that business. So hopefully during the inquiry, before you got off the phone, you said, I will follow up. I'm going to send a proposal by this date. Hopefully we can set up a call. Are you available on Thursday for us to review? That you're always trying to get that next step and actually secure that phone appointment so that you stay in that communication. If you leave it up to them to call you back, we all know what happens. We get ghosted and then we never hear from them again. So you want to make sure that you're always keeping yourself in the game by having those steps. So 1, have that lead catcher immediately respond to the lead and copy the salesperson that's going to take that lead. 2, after any correspondence, any communication, whether it's an initial sales call, an inquiry call, that we're sending that verification email right away as a way to reconfirm with them that we've heard them, understood them, keep the communication going, and then articulate what those next steps are going to be. I think for all of us, as we think about the RFP process, because I think it has changed, of course, life for us, everything, as one of you said earlier, I think who was it that said it earlier, everything's so electronic, right? And you said, I think it was you, Sarah, right? Everything's so electronic. We have to sort of take back some of that ourselves. We have to ask for those questions, and we have to stop sort of sinking into our own patterns. Like, for example, don't ever send a proposal without talking to somebody. Like, why would we ever send a proposal without at least attempting to talk to somebody? If we are, we're just throwing darts. If you see little darts, we're just throwing darts, hoping that we're going to get to something that was important to them. So having those opportunities to keep that communication is going to be important. So let's just quickly review as we wrap up our time. Asking questions is so important that we want to qualify the business, but uncover those specific needs. But have that confidence in doing that. Have the confidence to control the conversation, be that consultative seller that is going to then be able to position your solutions very directly back to things that were important to them. So that involves listening, that involves taking a lot of notes, all those things that we can do that we can put ourselves in the best position to be successful. It's not about being aggressive. It's about being assertive. If you think about, if I put a string down on the table here and I wanted to move that string from one side of my desk to the other, if I come behind the string and push the string, what happens? It bunches up. But if I come in front of the string and I gently pull it, it's going to come and lead behind me. And so that's what we're doing. We're sort of gently pulling our prospects, our clients, gently through the sales process, like to that natural conclusion of buying, right? That is the natural conclusion we're getting here. They need a guy, and you got to be that guy. But don't just go through the motions and do the same old spiel. Ask questions that genuinely show interest in them. Ask questions that show them that you genuinely care about what's important to them, and do so in a way that identifies those true needs so that you can definitely differentiate yourselves from the competition and differentiate yourselves in that process. So any final questions as we're just at the end of our time together today before we jump off? And I'm happy to stay on a couple extra minutes if anybody wants to stay on and ask any questions that they were maybe too shy to answer, ask out loud. But any final questions from anyone? No? All right, well, great. I'll just mention a couple other upcoming webinars. So I know in June, Mark Cooper is going to be presenting, he's at the conference right now, but presenting the 2024 results for Visioning the Meeting Rooms of the Future. That session will be on June 13th. And then we'll be doing another session at the end of June on June 26th on prospecting, the essentials to fill your pipeline. So if you want to learn more about prospecting, join us for that session at the end of June as well. So thanks so much, everyone. Look forward to seeing you again. Good luck with your probing and qualifying, and good luck with the summer. Take care.